everybody. Welcome to Full Sail University. My name is Kim Kraft. I'm a course director here. I teach entertainment media publishing and distribution. And welcome to the presentation this morning. We're talking about self-publishing, maximizing revenue, rights, and control over your writing project. A special welcome to my campus class. Where are you? Yay! There's a quiz on this after. No, I'm just kidding you. Okay, I'm going to walk around a little bit. I'm not used to having a stage, so bear with me. I'm hoping I'm not going to fall off, and that's not going to be my floor show for the day, right? Okay, let's talk about publishing. So let me ask, how many of you have a writing project in mind? You have a book in your heart, you've written one, fantastic. We have a lot of people. How many of you, you're just here because they made you come? Bless your hearts. I'm going to try to make this interesting for you today. Okay. I really think everybody has a book in his or her heart and soul. There's something that we all really know a lot about or do very well at. And the only problem is, especially in this country, trying to get published traditionally has been extremely difficult. And in fact, even if you do get published, unfortunately, especially with the recession recently, the numbers aren't very, very good. So just any guesses perhaps why it's so difficult, or it has been so difficult for people to get published? Any guesses? You know what the number one problem is for most people? They can't finish the book. It sounds crazy, but everybody's like, oh, I'm writing a novel. That was 5 years ago, and it's almost done, right? That is the biggest problem for most people. They can't finish it. If they do finish, usually what publishers are looking for is something that is technically as well as commercially viable. And the technical part throws a lot of people off too, because it really probably requires a lot of editing, which they don't have or they haven't done. The commercial aspect, well, the market will declare what that might be. But let's assume you have beaten the odds, though, and you actually have written and completed something, and it's very, very good. Technically, commercially, it's fantastic. Anybody know what is the next problem that most people run into? For traditional publishing. We'll talk about self-publishing in just a minute. Getting a publisher, there's something, let me ask you a question quick. Getting a publisher, can I just take my manuscript and pick a publisher and just send it to them? No. Why? Because they won't accept what? That's my class right there. Thank you. They won't accept unsolicited material. That's exactly right. This happened about 20 years ago. In the olden days, like 20 years ago, me and all the other old folks were laughing. We thought we were young back then. But in the olden days, 20 years ago, you could send it in unsolicited. You could just box it up, mail it in, send it to them, and you'd get a letter back from them either saying they were interested or, more commonly, we're not interested. A rejection letter, right? And then what happened is software and word processing came out by the early to mid 80s, and all of a sudden everybody could type a lot faster. You students, many of you probably never in your lives had to type even just a term paper on a typewriter. Very long, terrible process. Doing a whole book manuscript could take you, that's why no one ever finished their book, because they just couldn't even type it, Okay, so what happened is they stopped taking unsolicited works because they were getting inundated with them by the time we get into the mid-'80s, and also these works were falling through the cracks. They thought they had licensing options for them, they thought they purchased them, and when in fact they didn't, they would release these works, the authors would turn around and sue them for infringement, and it just got to be too much. And so pretty much across the board, all your mid-level to sort of flagship publishers, record labels, production companies started saying no more unsolicited works. They must come through an entertainment attorney or an agent. Okay, agents basically act as filters. They filter out a lot of the bad works. They have an eye for what will sell. There's a problem, though. There's another saying in this industry that getting an agent is harder than getting a publisher. And the reason for that is agents, well, here's a question. Why can't I just call an agent? Like if I was going to sell my house, I just call a real estate agent. Why can't I just call a literary agent and say, hey, shop my book? Some of you are laughing. You might have tried, right? No, I'm kidding. Can agents take everybody who wants to be a client? No, that's the problem. They're limited, first of all, to the number of clients they can take on, and they're also usually spending the majority of their time on the clients who are already established and bringing in a lot of money. So they don't really look for very much in the way of new talent. Occasionally they'll take on a new person, but the work has to be really, really good in the niche market that they shop, and so it's difficult to get an agent. So let's see, let's sum it all up. Most people never get their works published traditionally because, number one, they can't finish it. If they do finish it, it's very, very difficult to get an agent. They can't just send it to a publisher. Let's pretend we beat all the odds. I promise, by the way, my talk will get more positive. I know it seems like such a downer right now, but that's why I talk about self-publishing, because in a way it is sort of this ray of hope for us. So let's say you beat all the odds and you have found an agent and you have good content that you finished. Your agent is shopping it to a publisher and actually gets you a publishing deal. Yay, right? It's like, unthinkable. Well, now let's talk about what would happen to you in that case. Last year in this country, there were 500,000 new titles published. My class probably remembers this data. Of that, what is the average number of units sold per book? And this includes bestsellers in this average. In other words, last year, if your book was published, about how many copies do you think it would have sold? How much? Yeah, my class now says it's your turn. They're not going to answer anymore. Somebody said it's 5,000. That would be a very, very good number. A book with sales around 5,000 might actually win a prize, a Booker Award or something like that. I know, it seems shocking. How much? 20. A little tiny bit better than that. Actually, 200. Before the recession, it was a little better. It was 400. Now, when we think about this, 500,000 titles, and this includes books that are bestsellers that are selling millions of copies. What that means is the publishing industry works kind of like a pyramid. Think of a pyramid. At the top 10% of the pyramid are all these best-selling books out there that are selling millions of copies worldwide. That little 10% is bringing in about 90% of all the revenue. And that means, guess what percentage the publishing house is putting towards that 10% in the way of the best editing, artwork, marketing, distribution? About 90%. Okay, so that means the 90% of all the rest of the titles, which might include, my book, I got published because I'm not famous, I'm not a bestseller, is sitting in there and probably will get only about 10% of that company's attention. If I'm lucky, the summer intern might work on my file. What they will do for you in a typical book deal is they'll usually print about 2,000 copies of your book. They'll put it in a warehouse, and if somebody wants to buy it, if a wholesaler or a retailer wishes to purchase it, they'll do order fulfillment. They will get the copyright for it. They'll register it for copyright. They'll get the retail sales codes that it needs. We'll talk about those in a little bit, but they'll get it the barcode. They'll get it this thing called an international standard book number. They'll do those things so it can be sold at the retail level and distributed. But that's about it. Now, how do I know this? Because I practice entertainment law when I'm not teaching my class, and I've also published traditionally myself. And I have a book of mine published traditionally with a very, very big publisher. And my book is not a bestseller, it's a brisk seller. It will usually sell 400 to 600 copies a year, which is not that good, but in this industry, it's a brisk seller. And does anybody know what the typical royalty rates are that you get as an author? If you get this traditional book deal, what percentage of royalty rates do you get? Anybody know? Yes, between 10 and 20%, 15 is about average. I have a typical 15% net publishing deal, very, very typical. I wisely said I don't want an advance because I'm sure many of you know advances, well, that's what it is. It's an advance. It's a loan against future royalty sales. So basically, you're not going to get any royalty income until that advance is paid off, which, well, to give you an idea, I'll just use the music industry as a quick example. Madonna had to go gold 3 times, millions of records, before her recoupable advance for her record deal was finally paid back. The saying in the industry, whether it's book publishing, music, whatever, is usually your advance is about the only money you'll ever see. Okay, so I said, no, I wanted to just get royalties right away and not have to worry about anything recoupable. So I will probably sell 400 to 600 copies a year. The book retails for $30 at my 15% net. I'll usually get royalty checks in the range of $1,200 to $1,600 a year. I'm not going to quit the day job for it. I won't tell them I don't want the money, but it's not that good. For most people, publishing a book is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Unless you're a professor and you publish your textbook and then you force your students year after year to buy it, and especially, at the big expensive bookstores where the textbook is $300. What? Okay. Oh, and there's also the solution manual. That's another, $100 that'll set you back. Okay, faculty will tend to, we do pretty well if we do that, but okay. But for most authors with a trade book, not so much. Now, I'm not silly. I called my editor at the big publishing house and I said, can't you do some more things to boost the sales? For example, can't you offer, an electronic book, an e-book, a digital, a download of something of this book? And she said to me, no, that's only for the bestsellers. Oh, how about like an author website, No, that's only for the bestsellers. Oh, so never mind that book signing tour, right? But then she says to me, oh, but Kim, if you want to do that yourself, go ahead. In fact, my contract has a clause in it that says the author, that would me, will do anything deemed by the publisher necessary for the sale of the book. So basically, if they really wanted to play hardball and tell me, get out there and you make a website, get out there, you go out there and hype the book, I actually I would have to do that. They would support it in some way, but the bottom line is if you're in that 90 percentile, they're not really going to do anything for you. And that's when I started to think about, I had another book I was getting ready to send them, and I thought, you know what? I think I might give this whole self-publishing thing a try. Now, I have a couple quick slides to share with you. There's also another reason why it's been so hard on the traditional industry. The recession has been very hard on retail. And as you folks can imagine, the publishing industry makes, while it loves to tell you, oh, digital and online sales have, shot through the roof, and we've sold more digital copies of books than we did hard copies of books, which, is not untrue. When it comes down to how much money they make, though, the problem is, as you can imagine, they make more money on the hard copies. They can sell them for more. Consumers are not silly. Do we want to pay retail for something I buy online? Not really. I know it's just sitting on their server. It doesn't have nice paper. It doesn't have nice binding. It doesn't have color photographs. I know it didn't cost them that much. And consumers know that. They don't want to pay retail for download. So they're not making enough money yet off of digital sales, which is why they, are still making all their money off hard copy, and that's the way they want to keep it as long as they can until they can monetize digital sales. But in any case, just some quick facts you can see. Before the recession, as I was mentioning back in 2006, the average number of books sold was only 400 copies in a year for a book. In 2009, that number fell to 250. 2011, it was 200. Last year, 2012, it was also 200. Now, there's a funny statistic that goes with that. People who went out and self-published their own book, who said, forget it, I don't want to try to get an agent, I don't want to deal with contracts and all this business with traditional publishers, maybe I can't even get a traditional deal, I'm going to self-publish this book myself. It's very interesting. Those people, most of them also launched their book online. typically. Of the people self-publishing, and these are people who, many of them don't know anything about business, they don't know anything about marketing. Last year, they also averaged 200 copies a book, which means somebody just self-publishing their book will sell on average as many as the pros do if you had a traditional publishing deal. Now, I found that statistic very interesting because then I started thinking, wait a minute, what if the person self-publishing does know something about business? What if they do know something about marketing? What if they are willing to go out there to do what it takes to sell their own work? Because then I started thinking about self-publishing my new book and thinking, well, I don't want to do it for my big publisher because they're getting 85% of the money, I'm only getting 15. But if I'm getting more of the money, might be interesting. I was also going to start teaching a publishing and distribution class, and I wanted to try this out before I taught my students about it to make sure this whole self-publishing thing works. So I was also very discouraged by the numbers. We see very venerable publishers having to sell off assets, going bankrupt. We've seen major book retailers going bankrupt. And so I thought, let's try something different. So I've already kind of talked about these topics here. So what I started doing was investigating self-publishing. Now I get to the happy, fun part of the lecture. If you tell an older person, and I won't say any ages because, there's a few of us in this room who might take offense to that, but, somebody who is familiar with the entertainment industry the way it worked, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, and you were to say to them, I'm going to be self-publishing, they would probably look at you with a little bit of horror and a little bit of sadness. Sadness like, you couldn't get a real deal, could you? And horror like, oh, you're going to get ripped off by one of those vanity presses. Now, for you younger folks who may not know what a vanity press is and never have heard of such a thing, I'll kind of bring you up to date. A vanity press, it's not what it's literally called. It's a term in the industry. We've named it. It comes from the word vanity. If somebody's very vain, what does that mean? What do they like? Yes, they love themselves. They're just full of themselves. They're very vain. They just look at themselves in the mirror all the time and say, I love you, you're so awesome, right? Okay. I have practice, you could see, right? Okay. So what would happen is printing companies would prey on authors who really were trying and hoping to get a traditional deal and usually couldn't. And so what they would do, they would put classified ads in writers' magazines, and they would say things like, authors, submit your work to us. All topics, all titles accepted. Now, that could appeal to my vanity because as an author who maybe I got all these rejection letters or maybe I can't get an agent to pick me up to sell the work or maybe the work's just terrible. In my vanity, I'm probably thinking, that's what it is. Those publishers didn't recognize my genius. They didn't know how good my topic was. They probably didn't even know what it's about. But this company gets it. And so then what I would do is send my manuscript to this company. It would have a legitimate name, like Aspen Press or something like that. It would sound like a real publisher, right? I'd send my manuscript to them. A few weeks later, they'd get in touch with me and they'd say, we're delighted to tell you we're going to publish your book. And yay, I'm finally going to be a published author, right? And then they'd say to me, what kind of font would I like for the book? What kind of artwork would I like for the cover? What kind of paper would I like? This is all so exciting, right? And then all of a sudden they tell me, and we're just going to need an initial down payment from you for $5,000 to get the project started, right? And it's like, what? Wait, I thought you pay me. This is not a real publisher. This is a printing company who is the same way I would call a printing company to make business cards or flyers, and you got to pay them to make the copies. That's what they're offering to do. They're going to make 5,000 copies of my book. And, whatever it is, these companies would traditionally, just like the big traditional publishers as well, would have a minimum print order in those days, because the technology, the way it worked is you'd have to have a very big printing press, you'd have to hire an army of people to operate the press, there was typesetting that went on, it was very detailed and involved, and the cost for the paper and the binding and all that was expensive. So if they were going to roll those presses and get those composition people together to set out the letters and design it and all that, there had to be a minimum number of books they would do to even fulfill the order. Usually that minimum number is 1,000, 2,000, sometimes it was 5,000. And the cost per unit would vary anywhere between $1 to $10 per copy. So this is why, of course, our Vanity Press would then announce to our budding author, hey, this is where we need that check for you for, $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is to go and make all these books for you. Most people at that point would say, okay, forget it, I'm not interested in this anymore, but the really vain ones would say, this is my chance to have my book in print, I'm going for it, and they'd write the check. And the company would fulfill its order. It would run the print job, and a truck would pull up and start delivering all these boxes of your new book. Congratulations. And they tell you, well, you get to keep the copyright, and you can sell it for any amount you want. It's not like a traditional publishing deal where you have to give your copyright away to the publishing house and you're only going to get 15% royalties. It's your book. You own it. You sell it for whatever you want. Good luck. God bless. And now I've got this, I've got 80 boxes of hundreds and hundreds of these books, and I don't know what to do with them. Most authors self-publishing under this arrangement are typically not business people. A few are enterprising. Let's say I say, hey, no problem, I'm going to, just put these books in the trunk of my car. I'm going to go to the local, Barnes & Noble and see, they'll buy a couple copies from me, right? Now I'll just sell it like that. So I show up at the Barnes & Noble, I ask to speak with the manager, and then the manager says to me, who are you? Are you a distributor? And I say, no, I'm the author. And then they look at me and they say, we're sorry, we don't buy that way. We only purchase from wholesale catalogs and we only purchase from distributors. And then they say, oh, well, are you in Baker and Taylor and Ingram, which my class, by the way, quiz alert, Baker and Taylor and Ingram, which are the two big wholesale catalogs for entertainment media products, to which I say, I'd never heard of it. No. Well, we're sorry, that's how we buy. And then they take a look at my book and say, well, we couldn't even sell this anyway. You don't have a UPC code, you don't have an ISBN, you don't have an EAN 13, and I don't even know what these things are, right? You got to have all these mysterious codes before the thing goes to print. Oh, who knew? So pretty much my dreams of selling it at the retail level are shot. I cannot sell it to wholesalers or retailers, which means now I'm left with, ooh, I know, I can sell it off my website. Nah, how much web traffic do I get? Let's think about this. An average marketing rate of return is typically 3 to 5%, which means, if 100 people visit my site, maybe 3 would be interested. Maybe 3 would buy if I'm lucky. I don't know. I have to ask, how much web traffic do you get? What's your optimization like and all that? Usually you don't sell a lot off of your website. Even if you do, oh goody, then you get to deal with taking these orders to the post office and mailing them and then dealing with customer service when the people call you to say, I didn't get it, or I don't like it, or it's damaged, or I want a new one. And then what you'd see happening, especially to self-publishing authors in the old days, or even small independent presses trying to release books, they wound up spending so much time doing customer service and had so few distribution outlets, it really became a pointless effort. So at this point, now that I've been completely depressing, this is now the happy, fun part of the presentation where I tell you what has changed. Look, fortunately, times have changed. This is now the meat and the potatoes of our presentation about self-publishing, why I'm standing up here today, because in the last 5 years, the technology has changed everything. And I want to introduce you folks to an option If you just don't want to go the traditional route for all the reasons I mentioned, or maybe you want to try to build a track record of sales and a fan base and a following so you can be extremely impressive to the big players later on. You don't want to get wrapped up with a vanity press because you know the problems I've mentioned about that. In other words, you don't want to try to print your own copies and then try to sell them yourself. It's very difficult. There is another option today, and it's called a print on demand, or POD. And the reason print on demand is even possible is because of technology that we've really seen escalate in the last 5 years. The first technology are these high-speed web press printing machines. These things are absolutely amazing. I show my class a video of them. What they are essentially, they're like a giant photocopy machine that only has to be operated by one person. You digitally send a PDF or a Word doc of your manuscript. It gets fed right into the computer on the machine, and they just enter in the information. It scans your manuscript, your data file, camera ready, and then it sets up all the printing, the binding, everything like a photocopy machine. And print on demand literally means that. You want one copy to come off, press the button like a photocopy machine, one comes off. You want 10, 10 come out. You want 100, 100. It's no more of this minimum print run of 1,000 or 2,000 copies, because this machine does not take up the size of a whole room like a traditional printing press does, and it does not require an army of people to operate it and set it up. So the cost, first of all, of printing hard copy has gone way down thanks to this technology. The next thing, of course, is digital services, ebooks, and those services being provided more and more. Of course, the cost to distribute ebooks is very, very inexpensive. So we take this technology, and now what if we just have this publishing marriage made in heaven for us as potential authors? So here's my book. What if a very big company, and I hope I can say this on camera, I'm going for it, I'm going to rely on this is, this is a class presentation, so I think we're good with copyright and all that. It's, what if we had a dream like a huge company like Amazon, or a huge retailer like Barnes & Noble goes and buys one of these print-on-demand machines. They've already got distribution in place. They already have marketing in place. They already have a customer service in place. They already have a huge base of clientele, customers. And then they say, hey, we'll offer you the chance to self-publish your book through us. And here's what we're going to do for you, and then here's what we're going to get. Number one, what we're going to do for you, you can keep your copyright. We don't want it, so that's cool. You keep your copyright. Number two, you can pretty much do anything you want with your book. We already have distribution in place. We can use our fancy new high-speed machine to print the copies. And how we're going to save money is because it's print on demand. We're not even going to spend the money to print a copy of your book until a customer buys it and we have the cash in hand. So now we're not talking about the expenses of inventory, no expenses of overhead. It's just this beautiful thing. And if somebody buys it, we press the button, we make the copy. 10 people buy it, we press the button, we make 10 copies. They already have distribution in place. We can mail them the hard copies. We already have customer service in place. We can take care of all the headaches for you, the author. If people start crying, I didn't get it or I didn't like it, no problem. We'll deal with all that. We're already set up for it. We can do marketing because we're Amazon. We're Barnes & Noble. Of course we can do the marketing for you. We can cross-market it. We can send announcements to our customers. We do all these things for you. And then you start thinking, ooh, let's talk about cost. They'll tell you, the next thing we'll do, there is no minimum print run. So you, the author, do not have to pay for 5,000 copies in advance because we're not printing them like that. We're just printing them on demand when people want one and have already paid. So you don't have to upfront huge amounts of money. You really don't have to upfront hardly any money. Usually the startup fee for a legitimate print-on-demand service is less than $50, and that's good for a whole year of administration. The next thing, royalties. Well, they're going to get a cut, but their cut is not going to be 85 or 90%. Their cut is typically going to be, let's see, if you're doing hard copy where it's a little bit more expensive, your royalties, instead of 10, 15, 20%, will be 40 or 45%. If you're doing a digital download of your book, usually your royalties will be 70%. And you can set the retail sale price. You can charge whatever you want for the book. And they'll give you little calculators to see, okay, how much would you get if you priced it at this with your royalty, exactly how much would you get per unit? The next thing, how do they make their money? They do it in volume. First of all, they don't have overhead expenses or inventory expenses because it's print on demand. Now picture, there's not just one person who wants to do this. There are now thousands of people who are jumping on the bandwagon doing this. First of all, everybody's paying their startup fee. When I did this, I chose the professional standard because I wanted to get all the retail sales codes. So I think I paid $37. It was, for this. Okay. I didn't want to pay more than $50. That was my goal, right? So first of all these thousands of people are all paying their little startup fee. And then the company who's administering this is going to get their royalty of typically anywhere between, 30 and 60% off of all of your sales, times all the thousands of copies that all the thousands of people who are self-publishing are doing. So they're actually, and some self-publishing people, for example, like Amanda Hocking, who went through a print on demand, sold 600,000 copies of the 17 books she has self-published. So we're talking about volume, and so that's how these companies will make their money. The benefit to us is all of a sudden, my book is on Amazon and all of Amazon's affiliates, if I choose to use that print on demand. They also have all the wholesale deals. When I signed up for the service, one of the first questions they asked me was, Kim, do you need an ISBN number? Do you need a barcode? All these sorts of questions that I'll explain what this is in just a moment. But if you don't have those magic sales codes that allow your book to be sold to wholesalers and retailers and actually get in the hands of the public, they will provide it for you. And just to give you an idea, when you do your research of what print on demand you might want to go with, if you're interested in doing this, you'll see they're all a little different, but the one I chose, I was very happy with the rates because does anybody know if you went to buy your own barcode to put on your own product, does anybody know how much that costs? $700. Ooh. Oh my. No, don't go to that company if they're gonna charge you that. Usually $70 to $100 is about average. This other thing, this international standard book number I'm gonna talk about in a minute, that's also a little pricey too. That's a little over $100 for that. But what I found interesting with my print on demand is for my $37, they gave me both the barcode and the ISBN number. In other words, all these retail sale codes that I needed, which would have cost me somewhere between $200 and $300 by the time everything was all done. Library of Congress number as well, LCCN, they got that as well. Would have cost me $300 out of pocket, was all included in my $37 startup fee. Ooh. So what that means now is my book can be distributed to libraries, institutions, major retailers, wholesalers. Anybody could buy the book wherever they wanted to go shopping. And they have, of course, the affiliations with all of the major retailers. My book can be found not only all across Amazon and Amazon's affiliates around the world, it can also be found in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Borders when it used to be with us, Alibris, Powell. It can be found anywhere for my $37 startup fee. I set the retail sale price, there it goes. Now, what companies do you want to look at? In my class, we actually do this as a project where the students will be doing the research to find the company that's best suited for their needs. They're not all created equal. There are a couple companies as well that are actually vanity presses in disguise. They'll try to tell you things like, well, we'll print the book and put it out there, but you don't know a thing about marketing. You don't know a thing about sales. So you're going to need a press release. You're going to need a media kit. And for the low price of $25,000, which includes editing and artwork, we'll do it all for you, right? Be very, very careful. Some of these companies are crazy. A very good print on demand is not going to charge you anything except a modest startup fee. What's tricky, I'm going to list a couple of these, and these are the ones, I'm not endorsing any of them, but if you were to do a search, let's say online, to look for a print on demand that would help you self-publish, these companies are the ones that are going to come up. They're going just to come up first. So again, it's not an endorsement, and as I mentioned, one or two of these are specialty presses. For example, Tate and Zulon, as I recall, only do Christian works. Dog Ear is one of those companies that for the low price of $25,000, they can make you a magical package, which I'm sure it's very good if you're interested. CreateSpace is probably one of the biggest. It has, over the years, bought up other print-on-demands. Author House, Lightning Source, Book Search have all kind of been bought up by CreateSpace. CreateSpace is the one owned by Amazon. Lulu, as I recall, is owned by Barnes & Noble. Blurb is very, very good if you want to do photo books, coffee table books, children's books. They have extremely good templates. Okay, so how does the process exactly work? Number one, your mission is go do the research. I don't endorse any of these companies. One might work better for you than another, and the one I pick may not work for you. It may be amazing. You just have to do your own research. But you find the print on demand that you like, and it's really easy. When I went to do this, there was no book how to do it. I just literally went to the Print on Demand's website and I watched the videos they had explaining the service. I read the terms of service, which is something every one of you could do if you wanted to do this. And then I just sort of made a checklist of what I was looking for. I had a couple must-haves. I must be able to keep my copyright. You must provide these retail sales codes for me so that the book can be distributed universally. You must provide wholesale as well as retail distribution. You must give me at least more than 15% in royalties. These kinds of basics. I would really like if you can offer both hard copy as well as digital release of the book, and I also want a non-exclusive distribution deal so that if I wanted to distribute the book, with another vendor or off my website or in some other way, there's not a conflict of interest and the company wouldn't mind. Those were my basics. And your very legitimate companies will absolutely do that for you. That's not a problem. So your step one, you create your content. What's tricky with self-publishing is it's all on you. At least if you get a publishing deal, they're gonna, even if you're in the 90 percentile that the summer intern helps you with your file, at least the summer intern somebody's gonna do some basic editing. They're gonna do the layout, they're gonna do some artwork. They're going to do those kinds of basic things for you. So if editing and or artwork are difficult, not a problem here at Full Sail. We always have dream teams of people who are extremely good at this. When I self-published my book, for example, I went to my faculty friends here and I told them, take out your red pen to edit my manuscript and be as mean to me as you want. And they were like, oh, yay, right? They're so happy, right? You can just make a teacher's day by telling them, be as mean as you want. We're like, oh, yay. The filters can come off. Oh, good, right? Okay, so they just tore it to shreds. The tricky part is listening to what they say. If you trust them, do what they say. I mean, if 6 people are all telling you the same thing, do it, right? So my manuscript went through multiple revisions. By the time it was done, I was really, really happy with it. And then I looked at the original and went, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. How did I think that was good, right? Take advantage, build a dream team. The artwork, if you're going through any of the big legitimate print-on-demands, they will offer templates for you. You have an option. If you're very good at Adobe, at InDesign, for example, you can do your own work. They will give you all the specs for how to lay out the cover art, the bleeds, all this confusing print kind of stuff. So you can submit your own. If you don't know anything about how to do that, like me, not a problem. They give you all these prefab templates, not only for the inner material of the book, but also for the cover art. And there was about 24 different templates that I had to choose from. I could change the font. There was also a library of about 1,400 royalty-free photos I could use for cover art. If I wanted to use my own artwork, I absolutely could. I just had to sign a thing swearing, yes, I own all the rights to it. No, I'm not infringing. No, nobody else owns it, all that sort of thing. So you can use your own. And the process then is very simple. You upload that content to them, and then they review it. They don't review it for, they don't review it for on an artistic basis, meaning somebody's not sitting there judging it and saying, oh, I don't like this subject matter, or I don't care for this topic, or it's not really written well. They're not judging that at all. The only thing they're really judging is technically, do the specifications comply with what they need so that they can literally physically print it or have it downloaded to customers efficiently so it will reach the person purchasing the item. Once it meets the approval process is usually pretty fast. It'll take anywhere from 1 day to maybe a week, depending how busy they are. And then the next thing you know, you will start to see it appear, which is really, really kind of exciting because all of a sudden one day, there's your book on Amazon and people can buy it. It's like, wow, I didn't need an agent. I didn't need a publisher. I didn't have to spend a ton of money. And look, and you can tell everybody I'm a published author. Now, as I was saying in this slide here, they'll ask you a bunch of questions about the formatting because it is your book. You have to decide, do you want it in black and white? Do you want it in color? What formatting size do you want? 6x9, for example, is very common in the industry, but there are other sizes too. You might want a specialty size book. You have to make all those decisions. Not to worry, they walk you through the process. They'll explain what these things look like, and you can kind of see it, and you just pick. The next most important thing, I kind of want to jump ahead to this. If you plan to sell the work, now they're going to ask you another really important question. This is probably the hardest thing to understand about this material. Okay, it's not that hard. But by the way, for my class, this is quiz number 3 coming up right here. Okay, all right, you guys, you're all ready to go. You guys who are coming to my class in a couple of months, here's a heads up, okay? No. Everybody else, you need to know it anyway if you want to do this. So these retail sale codes I was telling you about, when I selected, what kind of, my book I want and the size and all these formatting questions and issues, it gets into a very, very important question. Some people self-publish their works kind of just as a novelty or just kind of for fun, so that family members might be able to have it, or sometimes some students or people out in the industry will actually publish these things through these services so they have very professional looking content, portfolios that they'll take on interviews, they'll impress clients with. They have no intention of selling it at the retail level, or maybe they're distributing it at workshops or in a class or something like that. So there's 2 types of people out there. The ones who really don't want to sell it at the retail level. They just want it printed very nicely and to look very good. And those, well, like me and maybe like you, who, no, I do want to sell this thing. I want to sell as many copies as I can and make some money. So then that's when they're going to ask you, do you want to sell this at the retail level? And you tell them yes or no. Let's assume you tell them yes. Then the next step they want to know, do you want to sell it just in this country, or do you want to sell it around the world? It's like, ooh, the power, right? It's like around the world, obviously. Come on, The more customers, the more, right? The more money. Okay, so I said, yes, I would like international as well as domestic. Now, this is where they start to ask you some hardball questions. And the first thing they ask us is, Kim, all right, you want to sell this book internationally, you want a wholesale, retail level, not a problem, we can do that for you, but you need these special retail codes we talked about. So then they're going to ask me if I wish to provide them, or do they provide them for me? And you have to make a choice. And now this is the part that's a little bit tricky. Clients will often come to me and they'll ask me, well, what's the difference? The difference is critical. If you provide the barcode, this thing called the international standard number, this thing called the European article number, in other words, these fancy retail codes, if you provide them, They'll print them because they need them before they print. They're a legitimate company. They're not a vanity press. They know we need to put these codes on the packaging, on the book, before they go in the retail trade. If you provide them yourself for all purposes, then you are officially the publisher of the book. You may want that. Maybe your business is a publishing company and you want this under your logo. This is a work you're publishing. If you don't want to be the publisher, you just want to be the self-publishing author, tell them, I don't have it, you provide it for me. In which case, that was my situation, they did. And as I say, it was a huge savings because usually those codes, if I were to purchase them, are a couple $100s, and they were all included in my $37 startup fee. Yay. Now, the next question I get, well, what's really the difference between if I'm the publisher or I'm not? Is there a pro or a con? What does the difference mean? Well, if you're a publishing company, that is your business. Well, there's the obvious answer. You are keeping the royalties, they're going into your account. You're also getting all the business deductions for tax purposes. Anything related expenses to the business is a legitimate deduction that you can make. On the other hand, on the con side, if you're the publisher, you're the publisher. So if wholesalers have issues or questions, or there's some legal issue that blows up or something bad happens, you're the publisher. So this is why I always tell my clients and my students, please, if you're setting up a publishing company, even if you're just self-publishing one work, what we call a one-off, please set up as a corporate entity. Do not try to do this as a sole proprietor. If you do, that's 100% legal and personal liability, financial liability directly on you. It's very, very dangerous and risky to operate a business like that. In any case, so if you're a self-publishing author, that means they're going to provide all those codes for you, but they're going to be listed as the publisher of the work. You're still the author. You still get to keep the copyright. In my case, I was like, fine, I don't care if, Create Spaces or Author House is the publisher. I don't care. I just want to get the book out there. I just want to be the self-publishing author. And that's fine. So you have to make that choice. Now, if you did want to be a publisher, I'm not going to go into too much explanation about this, but I think I might have. Yeah, I do. I have this slide right here. If you do want to be the publisher and you do want to actually go out and get your own retail codes for books and printed material, it's very easy. There's the company R.R. Bowker, B-O-W-K-E-R, is the official U.S. agency for ISBN numbers, and they will issue the code that you need specifically so that your book can get into the retail sale channels. Also, if you want to get a barcode, they used to have barcode software years ago. It was really nice. You just spent $50 for the software. You can make any barcode that you wanted. I haven't seen that out in years, but if you just do a search on the internet for a company, search carefully. One young man was, thinking it might be almost $1,000 for a barcode. Keep looking. You'll find one for $75. You might find one for $50 if you really dig. They're not that expensive. And as I say, when you have those codes, then you provide them to the print on demand, and you go into all the catalogs and the wholesaler information and the distribution channels as officially the publisher. In this case, the print on demand is really only now acting as a printer for you and order fulfillment for you, but you're the publisher. But I just wanted them to do everything, okay? So it's pretty easy. As I mentioned before, you want to beware of these turnkey solutions. One difficulty we have as self-publishing authors is the print on demand will get it out there for you. They do a great job with distribution. They do a great job with customer service. They'll handle all that for you. You never have to, make sure somebody gets a copy of your work. They'll take care of all that for you, which is great. There is one thing, though, that you do have to do. And someone very wise in the industry shared this with me. Whether you're trying to sell your music, your movie, your book, whatever your content may be, there are 3 keys to getting it out there. Number 1 is good content. If the content is not very good, you could have the best marketing and distribution on the planet, but nobody's going to want to get it. Assuming the content is good, you need good marketing. because people need to know about it. Again, you can have the best content on the planet, but if people don't know about it, forget it. The third thing you need is distribution. You could have the best content in the world, everybody knows about it, but if they can't get it because the distribution is poor or non-existent, forget it. So you need all three: good content, good marketing, good distribution. I'm going to assume, for purposes of our discussion today, that your content is amazing. Okay. If you go to a legitimate print on demand, they will get you the distribution. They will make your work available in all the wholesale and retail channels. The marketing is up to us, and that's where it gets a little tricky. I often ask self-publishing authors, what do you know about marketing? And we're talking about marketing kind of on a very ground level, because a lot of self-publishing authors don't have money for traditional media campaigns. You don't have, money typically for radio ads or newspaper or magazine spreads, so it really has to be pretty much a social media kind of marketing strategy that most of us devise, where you're building a fan base and a following using all these kinds of internet marketing strategies. I know many of you have that class or will be taking that class. There's a lot of material out there about that, but that's really how it has to be done. Or you need to be friends with someone who's really good at helping you with promotions and getting the word out. Because that's where most self-publishing authors fall down, that the book is available, but nobody knows about it because they're not doing really anything in the way of marketing. It's a common mistake to think that if I just put it out there on the internet, everybody's going to see it. Come on. This is spoken by someone who's, I guess, never used the internet, because there's a gazillion things on the internet. How does yours rise to the top that somebody sees amidst all the other stuff, right? You all know that. So it's all about... Let me give you a couple quick tips. I have only a few more minutes. If I had more time, I would devote it specifically how to market. But in the few minutes we have, I'll just give you a couple basic tips and tricks that have worked. So when my book came out, the first thing it did, it hit Amazon, which was great. And the print on demand is able to fulfill orders if any wholesalers or any retailers wish to buy the book. This is a tricky thing, though. Bookstores, for example, are not going to just place an order for an unknown book. They have lots of competition for the limited shelf space. So your book basically has to either be requested by a bunch of people, in which case they'll go, oh, look, all these people keep requesting this book. We better stock a couple copies of it. All right, that's usually the number one way. Or when your book is self-published, the industry is keeping track of sales. And when you start to hit certain magic numbers, all of a sudden your book becomes available. For example, I noticed with my book, as soon as it hit 2,000 copies in sales, all of a sudden it was available online through Barnes & Noble. Like, ooh, just overnight, it just happened. So one thing to keep in mind, these print-on-demands will all tell you we have these arrangements with all these distributors. Yes, they do. That means if any of those, retailers will call and say, hey, I want a copy of, your book or Kim's book or whatever, that's not a problem. They can handle that for us. But always remember, the retailers make the choice of what they wish to stock or what they wish to purchase. So if any of you do any kind of self-publishing, whether you're doing this on the book side or some of you on the music side, you might be going through the equivalent. On the music side, it's what we call an aggregator. And music aggregators like TuneCore, CD Baby, for example, they do a great job. They're exactly like this. They'll get you on all the digital places. They'll get you on, iTunes tomorrow, piece of cake. But when it comes to actually hard copies, let's say of a CD winding up in Best Buy or Target or something like that, that's a little different. Those stores actually have to place an order, but they can fulfill it. So your job is to run around and get everybody to want this. Now, how do you do this? And I've got about 5 minutes left to tell you this, a little bit more, but here I go. So first thing I did, I have no more money. My goal was to spend no more than $50. I've already spent $37 to get my process going for self-publishing. First thing I did, I sent out an email blast to everybody I know. I worked in sales many years ago, and the first thing in sales they told us to do was make a list of 200 people you know. So it's hard to think, I don't know 200 people. You do, even if you just know them a teeny tiny bit. Those were what we call warm leads because they're not complete strangers. Okay, hot leads are people who definitely want it. You know they do. They want that product, they want that service. Cold leads are people, you're just cold calling, I don't even know who they are, they don't know who I am. They have no desire usually to get it. Very difficult in sales with those folks. So you make this list of all these warm leads. I went one better. I thought of 400 people. I had everybody. Lady who, sold me insurance, a guy who sold me a car, my revenge on them, right? Okay. And I made this list. I had everybody's email that I could think of. You don't want to send it through your company website. If you have a company, it's coming from your .com and you're doing a mass email, it's usually going to be flagged as spam if it's coming from a .com account, unless you have certain types of spam blockers that you've set up for your website. I didn't want to get all technical. So what I did, I just sent it through my personal account. All these emails went through my Hotmail account. Oh, funny thing, that doesn't happen when you send it from a personal account. So out go like 400 emails, no problem with spam at all. These people, what I did, it wasn't a hard sell. It was just, hey, hope everybody's doing well. I just want to let you know, I've just written a new book and it's available. And what I decided to do, I want you to think of 5 niche markets or demographics that would really like your work. Okay, 5 niche markets. It's sometimes a little hard to do, but I tell you, you can do it. I have like 42 now for my book, but you wanted to go at five of them. And when I was doing this email to this just cross-section of people, friends, people I went to high school with, people I've worked with, just anybody I can think of, I thought, what are 5 major groups of people who might be interested in and or like my book? And so I just mentioned, those of you from blah, blah, you might like the book because da-da-da-da-da. And I talked a little bit about that. Some of you also may like the book because da-da-da-da-da, and I talked about that. And I just went through all these things. And then I very coyly put a link to Amazon where people could immediately go see the book. There it is, right? And I just said, I'd really love to hear your feedback about this, and thank you so much. And that was it. I had no idea people would think, oh, look at that arrogant jerk telling us about her book. Who cares? No, the response was extremely positive. Many people wrote and said, congratulations, that's so wonderful, that's so... and in fact, in my first week, I sold 70 copies. Now, which when you're remember, 200 is the average. My goal was to beat my big publisher, sell at least 200, sell at least 400 or 600 to beat my brisk sales with the other book, and make at least $1,200 to $1,600 in royalties, right? My first week, just 70 copies, boom. You want to also look for a seasonal release if you can get it. I released my book right before Thanksgiving, so perfect timing. If your book is also, it has a theme or something too that can relate to a holiday, a season of the year, you want to try to plan a release around that time as well. Movies do that all the time, for example. It's very, very smart. Okay, after the email blast, the next thing, remember, I still have really no money. I set up a website, which any of us obviously can do, and you guys are much better at this sort of thing than I am. But the website, you'll want to have a place where it'll offer something of value or interest to people who come to visit that they can get for free. Really, it's like, thanks for stopping by. Here's some information. My book, it offered some technical information people could use for free for research or study or whatever. There was also a place, if people wish to buy the book, you always want to make your product available from your website. Click on the link, you can safely go buy it right there. The next thing it did, it also has a place for a fan club. Fan clubs are awesome. You want to join? Here, you get a free newsletter. You're in the loop on the new research related to the book we're doing, all these sorts of things. Fan clubs are your hot leads because all these people are obviously very into the subject matter. They really like it. They want to know more about it. So very interesting. I have right now just from the website, about 8,000 people on that list. And what that means is if I come out with another book or a sequel or something like it, that's 8,000 people who already like what I'm doing and like this stuff and will immediately want to learn more about the new product or whatever's coming out, and that didn't cost me anything. A social media presence on Facebook. I wasn't even on Facebook before this. I didn't want to be, but you kind of need to be. And then when I did the demographics and saw all the different clubs or fan pages related to subject areas similar to this book, and had some links up there, it worked very, very well. Something I'm not going to talk in detail about, but if you've never heard of the term, you might want to investigate a thing called stealth or undercover marketing. Companies use this all the time. We're not supposed to know about it as consumers because it's undercover, it's secret. I'll tell you what the principle is, and you decide if you wish to experiment with it. But basically what they do is the company has marketing people who will create an army of avatars who will then sprinkle across the internet on chats, on forums, on pages, across social media, talking about the book, the movie, the product, the music, whatever it may be, and saying how I like it or it's great. The thing about the avatar is that it looks like a real person. If it's done well, it's supposed to look real. The studies have shown that consumers will trust a review or a comment from a peer or a friend, something like 90% of the time versus only 10% of the time trusting an ad from a company. So stealth marketing can be very useful, but also be very careful when you're doing it. If stealth marketing goes wrong and customers realize what has happened, that there may be a backlash. There's technically nothing yet illegal about it if you do not lie or commit any kind of fraud. If you just have your avatar saying generic things like, that was an awesome band, or I love this book, that was really good, or just putting a link to it. There's nothing wrong about that. With the social media sites, be cautious, follow the guidelines. In general, they ask that anybody signing up for an account have an independent email. Just follow the terms of agreement, but that is used by big companies and self-publishing people all the time, just mentioning that. Another technique is to link up with someone who already has an existing fan base or following. The music industry has done this for many years. For example, you'll have, a band that's not very well known opening for a band that's really well known. And the idea is usually the fan base is very similar, the demographics are similar, and that new band is going to be seen by all these people automatically, and it usually launches them. That's something you want to consider doing too. If there's a heavy hitter in your industry who can write a review for you, who already has a fan base, you can do a link exchange with them. You can, offer them something. Again, if I had more time, I'd give you specifics. I only have time to give you some examples. But these are the kinds of tactics that we tend to do. Then you're automatically bringing their fans in. Another very critical thing is a press release. A press release is a one-page document that you create. Usually it says for immediate release on it, and it usually gives the cover art of the work. It will give a synopsis or a description of it, all of the technical information such as the retail codes, where it's available from, and then, again, some summary or synopsis of the material. What you need to do is make a list of all of the magazines, newspapers, media sources that may write an article or a review of your work, and then email them a little introductory email, and then attach the press release to it. Blanket your industry. I probably sent out about 400 of those. I got about 30 responses, which from a marketing 3 to 5% return was actually really good. And of that, I got about 15 reviews. You want to make sure you have complimentary copies, comp copies of your work to mail to these reviewers. It's a beautiful thing. Your work is reviewed, they like it. All the people who go to that site, usually they'll do it online, they'll also do it in hard copy. All those subscribers, maybe not all of them will read the review, but many will, and many are going to now also find out about your work to be able to buy it. I always negotiate. They'll provide a link both to my website and also to where people can purchase the book as well, in exchange for, doing the article and that sort of thing. If they like you, they'll do an interview with you as well. And if you do really, really well and you have a specialty, it's kind of funny because then you'll have people calling you. You can also, Wikipedia, any one of you can go on Wikipedia and put some information about yourself or as a tag or a reference about your work on Wikipedia, on related sites, on your own site. One last really good trick, you want to get a really good ranking as well. And there's a lot to explain, but I want to just tell you a very quick trick. If you were to do a search of my book on Amazon, my book comes up #1 in its category and #1 in a search term out of almost 300 items. If you were to do a search on Google of it, you'd see the same thing. I didn't spend any money to make that happen. I didn't use AdSense or anything like that. Google, YouTube, and Amazon all work on the same algorithm, and I'm almost out of time, but I do want to just tell you this quickly. I tease and tell my classes and clients, clicky, clicky, clicky. You click, 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 click. You can click from any computer. It does not go, oh, that's just Kim clicking on her computer. It will raise your ranking. When my book first launched on Amazon, it was like number, 200 out of 230 or something. Every day, I just click, 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 click on that book, click from different sites, click, 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 and then it would go up to like number 60, and then the next day it was up to 40, and I just kept clicking until I got it where I wanted, #1. You can Thank you. You could YouTube. Here's another one. You know, people they've got 10,000 views. They've got 50,000. They've got a gazillion views. Whatever it is. If you click ridiculously, let me warn you. What I'm about to tell you, do not do this with any kind of robotic mechanisms because they'll flag it and you'll get in trouble. But if you just do it nicely, normally. You can click on YouTube too. Here's your video on YouTube, right? Click, click, click. You don't even have to watch the whole video. Just click it, start it, refresh it, click it, start it, refresh it, click it, start it, refresh it. Those clicks, which are views, will not show up today. They'll show up tomorrow. So if I click 20 times, let's say I have 100 views today and I click 20 times tomorrow, I'll have 120. And again, it's not ridiculous. If you're clicking like thousands and thousands of times, like through a robot or crawlers, it catches that. But again, if you're just doing something normal or modest, or you have your friends clicking, you can very quickly do a little bit every day, and in the course of the month, all of a sudden, you've got thousands of views. And you know how people are. They're like, oh, this video's got like thousands of views. It must be good. I'll click it too. And then it just kind of takes off, and it gets rolling. So, maybe someday I'll do another presentation where I'll tell you all of my secret marketing techniques, but, that's about all the time I have. So, folks, I want to thank you so much for coming out today. It was such a pleasure to be with you.